Hey, what's up guys? Joker here. Today we are going to be revisiting performance in The Witcher 3, but we're going to be testing it with mods. I wanted to go back and retest this game for a while because the Witcher series is, without a doubt, one of my favorite franchises of the past decade and probably of all time, honestly. And when The Witcher 3 came out back in 2015, over 2 years ago in May of 2015, it was just a gorgeous game. The story was all there. It had a DRM-free release on GOG. So it just had everything working for it. It's not packed with microtransactions like so many titles are nowadays. And it just shows that you really can release a big AAA quality title from what is actually an indie studio with CD Projekt Red. They are completely independent without any publishers supplying them with money or anything. So I really just love this franchise. I love the developer. I'm looking forward to Cyberpunk 2077 when that does come out. I got into the series back in the second Witcher game. I wasn't too big a fan of the first one, mostly just because of, the combat and all of that was very, very different back then. And I came into the series on the second game, so I kind of fell in love with the more third-person, action-oriented RPG. And just, the world and the lore and the characters and everything. And one thing that I like doing in Witcher more than actually playing, or not more than playing it, but it's right after playing it, is I love modding it. I enjoy modding the Witcher games. I enjoy modding Bethesda titles like Fallout, Skyrim, all of those. So modding is a huge part, at least for me, in the Witcher series, and it has been since the second game, and I'm sure for many of you out there, that is likely the case as well. Now, if by some chance you still have not played The Witcher 3 or picked it up here on the PC, then you should stop this video right now and then go and buy it. If you want to pick it up using my affiliate link over to CD Keys, you can get it cheap over there. When the game came out, it was $60. They had the expansions thrown on, which add like another 30 hours of gameplay. So you can get the base game for $17.39 right now over on CD Keys, or you can get the Game of the Year edition for $24. So only like $7 more roughly. And that gives you all of the DLC for this game, which are the two huge expansions. This isn't like some microtransaction, stupid little DLC. I'm talking like 20 to 30 hours of extra game, like with story, not just busy work, thrown onto the main story, which was already incredible and took about 40 to 60 hours to do if you include side content and all of that. So really one of the biggest games, to come out in the past few years, and I still think it's one of the best looking games on the PC. I still don't really think it's been matched as far as open world content is concerned with RPGs right now, and the story and all of that all working together just make for what I consider to be as close to a perfect game as possible. So I wanted to go back and I wanted to benchmark this game with mods, mostly graphics mods actually. I did tweak this on my other system. So I got a whole bunch of mods on there on the 7700K build, and I tested that across 6 different graphics cards, 3 from AMD and 3 from Nvidia, so we can get a good picture of how this game is performing when running mods. Now, what graphics mods and other mods am I using for this game and that I would recommend? I will leave a one-tab link down in the description, so if you just want to go check out all the mods that I'm using in my testing, then you can go ahead and grab them yourself. But we'll start off with the graphics ones. The big one is probably the Witcher 3 HD Reworked project, which is always being well reworked. It's always having updates, and they're always improving it and just making different areas of the game look better that maybe they didn't touch on before. So I really love this mod, and I always keep an eye on it to whenever they happen to update it and release new textures for different parts of the game. So this is a huge one. This is probably one of the, not just in download size, but definitely one of the more recommended mods if you're looking to improve the graphics of The Witcher 3. The next one is fairly recent. It's actually called the Beautiful Grass mod, and it is quite nice. It makes the grass look really lush in the game, absolutely gorgeous, more close to what it was like in the original CGI trailers compared to when the actual game was released. There was this whole downgrade gate. When the game came out, everyone was saying that they downgraded the graphics, but it was mostly based off of CGI cutscenes they were comparing to. So they didn't really downgrade it all that much, honestly, but this makes it look closer to what the original trailers were for this game. You also got the Super Turbo Lighting mod, which is pretty self-explanatory. It's an overhaul of the lighting in the game. You've also got increased draw distance, which I was using here. So that's just giving you a longer and better draw distance in the game and more customization options for the draw distance. We've also got improved sign effects, which, as it states, gives you better sign effects. It makes if you're using like Igni, it has some more particles and smoke effects, and just looks better overall. We've also got a blood retexture that's kind of makes things looks more splattery and just better overall. We've also got all quest objectives on the map. Now, this is not a graphics mod, but this is more just a gameplay mod that will do as it says. It puts all of the objectives on the map, so you don't need to fiddle around going with your journal and wandering around to find stuff. You can just kind of have everything visible on the map, something that I personally prefer to have, especially on the second or third playthrough, now that you've already seen everything. And I have played through this game 3 or 4 times, I think. You just kind of have everything on the map, and it makes it a little bit more streamlined so you can kind of go through and tackle all of the objectives and not miss anything. Now, we've also got better trophies here, which is a gameplay altering one. It improves the effects of when you have the trophies equipped, so it just basically buffs them up a bit because they were kind of weak in the base game. This is not essential by any means, but it's something that I personally like having. The last two, I think, are kind of essential ones that really just add to my enjoyment of the game overall. The first one is galloping in cities. This allows you to run on horseback through the cities, which by default is disabled. You can only walk and kind of trot. And then the last one, which is the last but certainly not least, is to disable these storybook videos, which I absolutely love. This is one of my favorite mods, if not my most favorite, because otherwise you were going to be spending a ton of time, like loading between different areas when you fast travel and such, just looking at boring storybook cutscenes, and you'll probably see the same one over and over and over and over again because it's usually linked to whatever your active quest is. So if you keep failing, or if you're just going around doing side content and reloading the game often, you're just going to be looking at the same stupid storybook over and over again, and trust me, they get old really fast, and this is something I definitely love, and it also cuts out all of the intros as well when the game first starts up. So just kind of, you launch the game and it just throws you right into the menus, and since I'm an impatient bastard, I quite like this mod a little bit. So getting into the performance now with The Witcher 3 and all of the mods equipped. First, I did want to do just kind of a baseline and just compare what the impact of the mods actually was. What was the performance impact of the mods with Witcher 3 versus not having the game modded? And it wasn't really that interesting, honestly. It was only about a 1 to 2 FPS difference here, where I tested the GTX 1080 at 1440p on Ultra with mods versus no mods, just to kind of look at it side by side and, see what the end result was. And it wasn't all that interesting, honestly. Like I said, with the mods enabled, it got an average of 63 FPS and a minimum of 57, while having no mods got an average of 64 and a minimum of 58. So a 1 FPS difference either way there on the average and the minimum, which is pretty much within the margin of error. And yeah, the visuals for the graphics mods anyway, I think make the game look incredibly better, but not that big of a performance impact, which is always nice to hear. It's not like Skyrim back in the day, which would just completely cane your VRAM, and you needed like a card with like 8 gigs of VRAM just to be able to run all your mods. That's not really the case here in The Witcher 3. The game is much better optimized, and the mods are not nearly as demanding as something like back in Skyrim, if you remember trying to mod that game. So for my comparisons with the different GPUs, I did use different graphic settings depending on which tier of GPUs we were testing, whether it was high-end, mid-end, or kind of in the low-end range of graphics cards, which is how I did the matchups here as well. So for like the high-end, we've got Vega 56 and the GTX 1080, and I was running the game on Ultra, whereas on the mid-range cards, the 1060 and the 580, I ran it at high settings, and then on the 560 and 1050 Ti, I did those at medium settings, which I think is comparable to what most people would probably want to run if they were trying to get 60 FPS with those given graphics cards. Obviously, moving it up to 1440p, it's going to be much more taxing, and you're really looking at something like Vega 56 or GTX 1080 if you're wanting to run this game at 1440p. I would say high settings is probably going to be the better bet because you can see some dips down below 60 depending on where you are in the game. But we'll start off there with the Vega 56 and the GTX 1080 with the 1440p here, running in the side-by-side. The numbers are fairly close, but it is favoring Nvidia, which doesn't surprise me all that much because this was an Nvidia GameWorks title when it came out. It uses things like Hairworks and HBAO+, so it doesn't really surprise me that it's being better optimized here for the Nvidia GPU, although oddly enough, that did switch up with the RX 580 and the GTX 1060. But either way here, if you're looking to play this game at 1440p, you're probably not going to have too much of an issue with either Vega 56 or the GTX 1080 here. And obviously, if you were to go into overclock your Vega 56, you'd probably do even just a bit better there, but still averaging pretty close to 60 FPS. And if you were to knock some options down to high, then you would probably be smooth sailing on Vega 56. So taking a look at the graphs now here and starting off with the GTX 1080 and RX Vega 56 at ultra settings with all of the mods enabled that we went over there, we can see that the GTX 1080 at 1080p got an average of 89 FPS, and at 1440p an average of 63 FPS. And then on a Vega 56 for 1080p an average of 78, while at 1440p an average of 56. So both of these cards easily able to handle the game maxed out at 1080p, but if you are looking to play it, with mods and everything maxed out at 1440p, then you're probably going to have some performance drops down below 60 FPS. And if you are trying to avoid those altogether, I would look at probably disabling something like Hairworks first, which is enabled when you use the Ultra preset with 4 times anti-aliasing on the hair. I wasn't using the ridiculous 8 times anti-aliasing, that's just silly. But the 4 times even just is still really taxing, and if you want to get a nice bump in performance, you can try by just disabling Hairworks or grabbing a mod that it's only on everything but Geralt, because you really don't need that spaghetti string hair waving in the wind anyway on Geralt, which I don't think really looks that good. I think it looks much better on things like the trophies in the game, which look very nice with the Hairworks enabled on those. Looking at the 1% lows now, we could see that the 1080 got a 1% low of 70 FPS. At 1080p and 48 FPS at 1440p, while Vega 56 got on 1080 a 67 1% low, and at 1440p 51% low. So both cards dipping down below 60 here on 1440p. So like I said, if you want to get that bump in performance, just go ahead and disable Hairworks and maybe knock down HBAO Plus to SSAO, and you should be smooth sailing and getting much better frames on these two cards, at least at ultra settings and 1440p. Look, moving into the mid-range cards now, which were tested at high settings with the RX 580 and the GTX 1060. That's an 8GB RX 580 and a 6GB GTX 1060, by the way. And all of these cards were tested on the latest drivers from Nvidia and AMD. So for Nvidia, it's their latest 388.00, and for Nvidia, it's 17.10.2 or 17.7.2. 17 point something point 2. It's the latest one. It just came out for Destiny 2. It's really new. Okay, so looking now at RX 580 and 1060 at high settings, you could see that 1080p, not going to be an issue. The RX 580 getting 70 FPS average at 1080p. 1440p, it's going to struggle quite a bit, getting 50 FPS. You'd probably want to play either of one of these cards down at medium if you're really looking to play at 1440p. GTX 1060, you're looking at 69 FPS average at 1080 and then 49 at 1440p. So we do see a slight advantage here for the RX 580, although we're pretty close, kind of within the margin of error, and that does continue over into the 1% lows as well. Getting very close here, only a difference of 4 FPS here for the RX 580 and the GTX 1060 at 1080p, and a 2 FPS difference at 1440p. On medium settings now with our lower end GPUs, the 1050 Ti and the RX 560, which are both 4GB cards from Nvidia and AMD. We've got the 1080 Ti pulling in 57 average FPS at 1080p, and both of these cards just don't even, 1440p is not a consideration unless you want to play it down absolutely like low settings, then maybe, but both these cards can honestly play the game fine at 1080p. The 1050 Ti is going to be off just a bit better than the RX 560. Looking at the 1% lows, you could see both of them, even at medium settings, you're having dips down below the 50s, so not the greatest experience, so you'd probably want to look to tweak your options even a bit more, lower than medium if you are on one of these lower-end GPUs, but it is running better on the 1050 Ti, which cost about $20 more than the RX 560, so I guess that's to be expected, although for the bump in performance, I'd say another $20 is probably worth it on that card, honestly, if you're in the market for a low-end GPU and you're looking at RX 560 or 1050 Ti, something around that price range. I do think the 1050 Ti is worth the extra $20 to $25 more than what you're going to pay for either an RX 560 or a GTX 1050. So those are all of the performance numbers that we got running on the 10 different mods that I showed off at the start of this video. So if you guys have any suggested mods you want to leave them down in the comments below that I can try, then let me know, and I will certainly give it a try on The Witcher 3, because I've been playing this game for over 2 years now, and I still haven't gotten tired of it yet, especially with modding, which sometimes will make me want to just go start an entire fresh playthrough. If like a new mod comes out or some type of mod that'll tweak the gameplay, it will definitely reinvigorate my interest in a title like The Witcher 3 or any of the Bethesda games that have modding like Fallout 4 or Skyrim, although now I hear that they're charging for mods, so that's maybe not great. But anyway, if for free mods are awesome. I love them. They add so much more time for me to put into a given game, whether it's, you know, post just when it first comes out or years down the road. It will make me revisit titles just to go check out the new mods, just to see what they look like and how they perform and all of that. So really one of my favorite aspects about gaming on RPGs like this is the modding scene. So if you are the same, then let me know and leave a like on this video down below if you enjoyed it, and subscribe if you're not already. And yeah, I will catch you guys in the next video. Ta-ra.